Why did you go to Brazil? And how long did you go for?
I was there for 6 months.
6 months. You lived there.
Yeah. So when I got laid off after September 11th, it was kind of a little, September 11th was a crazy time.
Man, I remember that
I had
very
never
well.
traveled. So I'm one of these free-spirited guys. Like, I'm still that way. I'll pick up and go anywhere. And I never really was able to do that. Because I played football, I couldn't go study abroad.
Right.
And I remember my office that I worked for, we had a lot of London guys, a lot of guys from England. And like, when you're a European, you don't start, they travel before they start their
Careers, right?
careers.
Yeah, right.
And I remember getting laid off, and I thought it was the worst thing in the world, because it's after September.
But then
11th.
you go to Brazil,
and one of the European guys was like, Jamal, go travel. And I went and I was like, you're right, and I traveled.
What's the thing you learned from Gordo? Tell me, like, in retrospect,
It's a funny story. So
I train with Gordo.
The funny story about Gordo was the first day I get to Brazil. I go with Gordo. We're going like no gi, and we start going after each other.
Yeah.
Right. And I have him in a guillotine, all of Gracie Baja.
I finished Gordo.
Did you?
I finished him. He was mad at me.
So,
I shouldn't have. In retrospect, I should have.
I didn't finish. So I put him in a guillotine.
I finished him with a knee bar.
Did you?
He did not like it.
So I had Gordo in a guillotine, and I had him, and I was like, and the whole Gracie Baja stopped to watch, and I remember letting it off.
You should, bro, you're much smarter than I am. I did that with one. I'll keep his name out of it too, but I let a Gracie out of.
I'll tell you who I let out
triangle.
all the time was Hine. I never would ever. There was many times where I thought I could have got something on Hine, but the risk versus reward wasn't
killed you,
worth
man.
it.
He would have killed you.
Yeah, he would try to kill me after.
There was a Gracie who 2 weeks after we trained had got second at Abu Dhabi. And I finally came to my senses. I let him out of a triangle. And like, not that I was better than him or anything like that, but like I still had something to prove in my head.
Yeah.
And that, I think, killed my relationships with the Gracies and with a lot of my classmates.
Yeah.
I wish I could take it back, but like, that's a smart move, man.
But when I was in the mix, when I was training for Abu Dhabi, I'd go after to go to, like, if I could finish them. But that was,
I wasn't training for Abu Dhabi.
It was different.
I was an in-house guy.
Yeah, it was different. It was different at that time, you know what I mean? And then also at that time, we were kind of like peers, you know what I mean? Not peers, but we're fucking training for Abu Dhabi. So like, if I'm going to get something on you, I'm going to get something on you. And listen, when you train with guys long enough, you're going to catch them at something eventually.
I don't know. Maybe he was working on something. I don't know. But I remember having a conscious decision like, nope, I'm not going to finish this.
Yeah.
And I was happy I did, man. And what I'm saying to you is like, you did the right thing with Gordo, bro.
Yeah, but then, it was funny because when I was in Brazil, I was there with a bunch of Americans, right? Mm-hmm. The Brazilians loved me. They loved me. Like, they would like take me to parties. Gordo would like, because I respected them. Like, I respected their culture. It was like, when I was there was a bunch of Americans there, and these guys were like blue belts, right? And they're sneaking to other gyms and train at like American Top Team and train with Hoyletta and all of these guys that had big names. And I'm like, bro, you're fucking blue belts.
Right. Settle down. And you know what? Like, I did private lessons with Gordo, right? Because I'm like, I'm going to learn how to get good at this stuff. So what's the thing you learned from him?
Details.
So he taught you how to think about details?
Yeah. He broke down a lot of like little, like, especially because of the half guard game, was like the technical side of it and how much technique really came into it. And then, and it helped me because it really.
Well, he's the guy who developed it.
Yeah, but think about this. I all of a sudden became a guy that was a wrestler that also kind of half guard.
Right. It's the single leg.
Yeah.
Isn't
which
it?
is similar. Yeah.
It's the single leg.
So I could, like, worst case scenario, I would wrestle up to the single leg. But I didn't never had to because my half guard got pretty good,
Right.
you know? And he just really taught me how to be technical. And, me and Gordo still have like a connection to this day.
Yeah,
It's
he's a
funny
great
because
guy,
me and
man.
Gordo have like, he'll always like message me. And I still have a really, really good, a really like that, those group of guys from Brazil that time really took me under their wing. And we had a pretty, I would say we had a pretty good relationship, a
Let,
special thing with
let
them.
me. I want to get to the school, but I also want to, like, while we're on this topic, can you think about like what's the most important thing you learned from Renzo Gracie, from like our teacher? What's the most important thing you learned?
Life stuff
Yeah,
from Renzo.
give us one.
Uh, always, people don't care what you have done. People care about how you treat them.
Yeah,
And the one thing Renzo will do, I don't care who you are, you walk in there, Renzo will make you feel like 100 up, like you're one in a million, like he's known
yeah,
you for years.
yeah.
And somebody told me that once, and then I realized Renzo's that person, and I try to do that as much as I can. And when I meet somebody, I try to leave some sort of impression that they mean something to me. But they do, they do. And trust me, it's not easy for me because I have ADD. Like
Yeah.
like 1 minute I'll do that, next minute I'll walk right past you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I try to, make people special because it doesn't matter. Like all your achievements and all of that stuff, it doesn't matter. It all that matters is how you treat them.
Brilliant. So you learn how to treat people well or
Yeah.
make them feel important, right?
And then from a competition standpoint, that's
Yeah.
from like you know, Renzo just had this like swagger about him. He was one of the Gracies that did. The one thing I'll say about Renzo is he was very open minded. He was a very open-minded martial artist. When you look at like Horian and those guys, they're like this is the original jujitsu. This is how you do it,
Well,
And
back in those days, Horion was trying to keep the Gracies from using the Gracie name.
yeah,
He was
yeah,
trying to stranglehold everything.
yeah. But Renzo was one of the first guys that was like respected wrestling, But he probably got that from Holes,
Holes.
right?
He got
Because
that from Holes, for
Holes
sure.
was that guy. And so I would say like that is the biggest thing that I would say I got.
Buddy, I remember when I started working with Renzo to bring the school up, and we were going over the warm-ups at Ricardo's, and he said publicly, like, there was a group of us there, he's like, I can feel Holes in the room, and he's like, he's saying that this is the right way.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
never forget that.
Holes I never met him, but I feel like I have his spirit still in my gym, and obviously because, I know Hole is and Igor, and like I was close with those guys. And, but just the way
For those of you who don't know, that's Hollis's sons.
yeah,
Igor and
Holes is,
Hollis.
and Igor, yeah. So I feel like he embodied he's basically like the Bruce Lee of like the Gracie family. What I mean by that is he did other things,
That's right. That's right.
And when you hear anybody talk about him, anyone, any of the Gracies, they have
You read Hickson's book?
no.
Yeah, he talks a lot about him and talks very highly of him.
Yeah, well,
You should read Hickson's book. Bro.
Yeah, that was. I mean, Hickson. That's who basically taught. Holes. I mean, Holes taught Hickson.
Holes taught Hickson.
And then I know Hens always talks about when they were coming up, it was like Holes would spend times with him and John Jack.
Yeah,
Sean Jack.
That's right.
And
That's
it
right.
was
That's
those because Henzo and Sean Jack were like the up and coming guys.
So let's talk about the school. So you and I had a conversation the other day, and you were like, I get it now. I get it. And I said, what'd you mean? And you said, what I understood that you said was like, it's about the martial arts, and you're seeing it, and like, take me through that a little bit. Like,
so
I know you and I had talked about like, it's challenging to be like this athlete coming out of combat sports and then making this turn.
It was when I first stopped playing sports. And doing sports. It was hard. It was hard trying to find my way. And then I started coaching fighters right away. And then I started I started thinking about like what it did for me my whole life, like,
Yeah, buddy.
believe it or not, everyone thinks that I'm this big personality, right? And as a kid, I was a shy kid,
Most of us, man.
introverted, shy kid. I used to make my brother Jason go get order ice cream for me. You know what I mean? Because I'd be
Sure,
too scared to get it.
sure.
And then, through sports, it got me out of my and I consider, any sport, wrestling, I consider that a martial art still. Not,
Yeah.
it doesn't have the same structure, but it still has the same kind of principle of working
Well, it
out.
certainly has discipline in
Yeah,
it.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
There's certainly a way to get through the physical training
I think
to get more.
so. The problem with so here's a great thing about what martial arts, what we do is structuring classes, and now I'm starting to understand how the Chinese and Japanese, how they started structuring classes and how important it was. Because when you're talking about football, you're talking about wrestling, you're talking about 2% of the population, right? The problem is everyone could use that, right? But the problem is not everyone can get through that, right? I think when you create a structure for martial arts, everyone can get through it, and everyone can learn
Benefit.
and benefit from it, right? We, we when we trained, it was different. We killed each other, and guys, we cheated people out of. I've cheated so many people out of learning how to do the sport, right? And what I've learned is, and I even look at some of the Henzo black belts that are well known now and great teachers now. When they were coming up, I would it was I jumped far ahead of them, but in 10 years, we're all in the same place,
Yeah.
But and I've had students that I have one student, he's a black belt, been black belt for a while. This guy couldn't even do a warm up without falling on himself. But with jujitsu,
Nice.
with time, and you put enough time into it, everybody can get good at it.
But also in the right environment.
Yes, the right environment, and
It has to protect them.
well, because with sports, it's here's the
You
thing.
weed out the weak.
Yeah, exactly. So we have football, we have wrestling. The thing is, that you'll lose that. You won't. At some point, that will go away, right? You'll always have martial arts, right? And now with jujitsu, because karate guys didn't do it as they were older. Now that you have jujitsu, where guys do it older, you have it forever. I think about my life right now. If you strip me down and put me, or took all my money away from me and put me in another country, you know what I would do? Survive. I'll go to jujitsu school and I'll figure out on how to do it. I did it in Brazil, right? I went to Colombia, right? I went to Colombia by myself, found the jujitsu school, and found my wife.
Right.
But it's
Yeah, I think that this is one of the things that Henzo was really genius about, is that in the way that you said he treats people like they are important, and they are important to him, is that he gave jujitsu to all of us in that way.
Yeah.
And certainly, look, I never, at some point I had 6 locations and an association. And I had many opportunities to open in Manhattan. I had many opportunities to, and I just never would. And it's because the guy gave me something really special and unique.
Yeah.
I had a martial arts school before I went to Henzo's, before I went to Kukuk's, and though what he gave me was something very special and unique, and you do carry it with you your whole life.
Yeah, and I'm not saying the traditional martial art, but the traditional martial arts were I don't know why jujitsu had gotten so popular. I don't know if it's because of the UFC.
I think it's a number of things. I think one is the UFC, and two is that,
you know what I think it is, honestly? I
Tell
think
me.
is the ability to still be able to roll live without getting hurt, right? Because the one thing about karate, Muay Thai, and even
you can do kata. You can karate has kata, kung fu has forms. There are those mechanisms. I think that there's a couple of things I think about in terms of jujitsu. One is that the level of contact there, and it's not striking contact, it's not impact contact. There's something very profound and for a lot of us healing. There's a lot of healing that's associated with that.
Yeah, because there's nothing, I mean, striking and katas and it's you get in and out, right? There's nothing more humiliating than when a guy is mounted on top of you.
Yeah, man. There's a
And
lot. There's
the
just
fact that you could have to work your way out of that and keep going is,
it's very powerful.
it's, when you it's a life-changing thing. When I remember, so going back to my martial arts thing, what happened was when I was done, when I went to Chicago and I was trying to find a school. There was no school.
That's where I started karate, Chicago.
Really?
I went to live with my brother, and he brought me to the
That's so
dojo.
crazy. We have this.
Crazy. I know. It's like this. It's wild, bro.
So after my company transferred to Chicago, and I was like, I'm going to find a kickboxing school. Right?
Yeah.
There was no kickboxing schools in Chicago.
Yeah. Karate.
Nowhere.
And taekwondo.
Nowhere.
No.
Nowhere. Karate, taekwondo.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. And wrestling.
Wrestling, yeah, but I wasn't, that wasn't it. And then I moved there. I had no furniture in my apartment. I lived in this loft. I had no TV. My stuff was getting shipped over from New York, right? And I would go downstairs to this bar to watch TV after work because I didn't have TV. And the bartender, who I still talk to this day, who's still a good friend of mine to this day, I was like, do you know any martial arts schools? And he was like, yeah, there's a Gracie school. And it happened to be across the street from where I lived.
Yeah. Wow. Carlson Jr.?
Yeah, Carlson. So at the
was
time,
it Junior?
Junior wasn't there. It was a guy named Pedro Viana
Uh-huh.
and Daniel Viana. Pedro actually passed away.
You know what's interesting is that the guy who introduces me to my wife at the time, Lori, ends up moving to Chicago and being a private student of Carlson Jr. and those two guys.
Daniel and Pedro? Yeah. Pedro died. He passed away.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
He died. He paid like a rock climbing accident.
Huh.
But I started training, and I remember I got there, and they put it on me.
Of course they did.
Yeah. And I was
Carlson Gracie's group.
Yeah.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah, Pete the Greek was there.
Huh. Fascinating. So,
you know who started the first day with me? Stephen Bonner.
Oh, wow.
I think we started the same week.
Wow.
Yeah, but he started boxing back then.
Yeah.
I remember he would ride his bike. He would ride his bike there every day. And I remember when he became like a big name in the UFC, I ended up seeing him later. And he saw me, and he was like very cool and respectful, which is cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
How many people you think you've met through jiu-jitsu? 10,000?
I don't
20,000?
know, man. What I've learned Renzo's skill of if I don't know them, I pretend like I know them anyway.
My man.
I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't tell people my secret. Yeah.
Chimp.
I had a buddy who not a buddy, he's a friend of mine. He's a friend of mine. He's an old friend of mine. Sometimes you just stay away from people that are negative,
Yeah.
But he's one of these guys that owned a restaurant. It didn't make money, right? It failed, and he's just not he's not a guy that can be in the front of he doesn't have a person. He's just not a friendly guy. So I remember I was with him, and people were coming up to him and introducing himself to him, and he would say his name and be like, "Nice to meet you." And my friend was like, I met this guy 100 times. He doesn't know who I am. And I told my friend, I'm like, bro, you're in the restaurant hospitality business. You got to pretend like you know everyone, bro. People think that's rude. You just go up to him and say, just be like, look at him and then you pretend like and figure it out,
Sometimes I have to ask people their names again, but yeah, I think I've met through the martial arts, 100,000, maybe 200,000 people. A lot of people.
When I'm in Colombia,
Yeah.
every time I'm there, my wife is like, I'll get someone on the streets, be like, Jamal.
Uh-huh.
And it's
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
from that
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
jiu-jitsu.
So let's so what's your thought about the school these days? And let's, we'll wrap it up with that. Like, tell me what your vision of the school is and like
What a vision of my school is.
Yeah.
I would say, my thing is I'm starting to realize now that I really need to service communities, right? And what I mean is, I need to like service my members and service people that normally wouldn't have access to do this kind of sport because this fight, there's guys. I know, I have a student recently, successful guy, and he's going through a divorce, and I know that jiu-jitsu is saving him right now because of his divorce.
For sure.
Like and I will say this, so there's two parts of it, and this is what's unique about jiu-jitsu. We have an older group, right? And the older people, it's a great way for them, and this is what I say all the time. I didn't miss football. I didn't miss wrestling. I missed the locker room.
Yeah, the camaraderie.
Yes.
The
right?
brotherhood.
Yes, exactly. Military guys, right? This is such a sport to like get that locker room feeling back, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's with mental health, it's good to be a great father, a great husband, a great, worker, and do it, but you also have to find time for yourself, right? And I think it helps people balance their lives out a little bit more. And also gives you an edge.
Yeah.
Right? You need to have an edge. You need to feel like you're a man sometimes.
Absolutely.
And
100%.
That's what I don't care what everyone is, whatever people say, but at the end of the day, like, we're men. And that's, if you put me in a jungle, like, I might have to hit someone over the head with a stick if I have to. But I know I can.
Yeah.
And then from the other standpoint, when it comes to kids, it's like, especially now, I mean, I'm really getting into teaching kids. I never had a kids program before. My school was all adults.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started teaching kids, and man, I'm an idiot for not teaching these kids longer, especially now. These kids have anxiety issues and it's all because of the technology, They need this more than anyone right now.
Yeah.
And then, the way I've been able to, I've done a lot of stuff that's similar to the karate style and structuring, classes from advanced to, beginners, and then advanced to leadership. And it's I'm teaching them how to have correct body language.
That's right.
I had a whole conversation
Posture,
with the kids.
everything.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't, because I had a kids program for a while, and I had some kids that have been in it for a while, and they still are like, and I'm like, whoa, guys, listen, you got to put a smile on your face, walk around here like you want to be here. Like, nobody, you have school and you have martial arts.
Right.
Martial arts is going to teach you the skills that you need to get by, right? Because no one wants to see a person walking around at work with their head in the freaking ground. You know what I mean? And schools don't teach these kids this.
Right.
It's like now everything is like, you got to be sensitive of what you do. Yeah. But no, if you're coming in my school, I'm going to say, do not come into my gym if you're going to look like you're like someone stole
miserable.
Something from you.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to work. And I really feel that I can actually do something and change some people now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tell me, lastly, what's the message for someone listening that's beginning jiu-jitsu, or you're probably now in your 25th year.
Yeah.
So what's an overarching message that
I would say the big message for me is balance. Right? You need to have balance in your life, right? And that's in anything, right? You need to be a good husband. You need to be a good father. You also need to be good to yourself. You also need to eat well, right? And martial arts, jiu-jitsu, if it isn't jiu-jitsu, do something. Do something that's going to get you around people that are like-minded and that are looking to do stuff to push themselves to get better. It could be a grown men's lacrosse team.
Yeah.
Do something that's different. Do something that's going to challenge you. The problem is people, they sit at home, they're with their families, which is great, but then what happens is that's their focus, and then they lose sense of who they are and they lose their identity. So, I think that the big message for me was just get out there and do something. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Jamal Patterson.
Thank you for listening to the Gentle Art Podcast. Please share, rate, and review. And if you have any questions or you'd like to reach out, please contact us at the GentleArtPodcast@gmail.com or contact us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. or thegentleartpodcast.com.